plus Opel Corsa C comfortable suspension settings, which, on the other hand, are poorly suited for high-speed driving. The design of the chassis is not much different from its predecessor. On the front axle, McPherson struts with stabilizer and wishbones. On the rear axle, a torsion beam with spaced springs and shock absorbers. The suspension is solid, unlike the steering rack, one of the pain points of the model. She starts knocking. Fortunately, its repair is not expensive or difficult. Almost nothing happens to the suspension, except for the natural wear and tear of the components. In front, you often have to deal with bushings and stabilizer struts, and in the rear with shock absorbers. In addition, with age, drive and wheel bearings make themselves felt. Opel Corsa S has a wide range of powertrains. All of them are well known from their predecessors. Gasoline volumes of 1.0 to 1.4 liters were transferred unchanged, while diesel 1.7 DI and 1.7 DTI are deeply modernized Isuzu units already with direct injection. The engine palette was completely updated in 2003 to 2004. Gasoline engines with a capacity of 1.0 and 1.2 liters acquired twin-port technology. 1.4 liters belongs to the new series, and 1.7-liter DI and DTI gave way to 1.3 CDTI and 1.7 CDTI with a common rail injection system. The smallest of the engines is generally not very successful. This is a 3-cylinder gasoline engine with a working volume of 1.0 liters. The engine does not differ in comfortable operation, and its return is only 58 horsepower, 60 horsepower. A much better choice is a 1.2-liter engine with 75 horsepower, and even better 1.4L/90 horsepower. Opel can also offer more powerful engines, such as the 1.8L with 125 horsepower, and 1.6 turbo with 175 horsepower, for the OPC version. The basic Latrushka, in addition to the relatively high fuel consumption, has an insufficiently reliable timing chain drive. In addition, the 1-liter engine is noisy and very weak. The 1.2-liter unit is almost trouble-free, like a 1.4-liter engine. 1.4-liter and 1.8-liter engines start to take oil over time. Interestingly, the same timing kit fits all 1.0, 1.2 and 1.4 twin-port versions. The chain stretch problem applies to all of these engines. Aggressive driving style and delaying oil changes contribute to rapid wear. The old 1.4 has a slightly different timing drive. Common problems include leaking oil sensor and coolant pump. The latter was further refined, and leaks began to appear much less frequently. It's no secret that under the Opel Index 1.3 CDTI, Fiat technologies called multijet are hidden. This diesel debuted on the market in 2003, and got under the hood only a year later, just after restyling in 2003. The 1.3-liter turbo diesel was created with the aim of reducing the size of the unit and increasing the output due to the common rail injection system and variable geometry turbocharger. However, the Corsa received a simple 70 horsepower diesel option and 170 Nm of torque, which was valuable in the entire range of engines, with the exception of the sporty OPC. 1.3 CDTI consumes an average of 4.5 to 5 L/100 km. It is noteworthy that at that time a particulate filter was provided for this engine, but not for the Opel Corsa C. Theoretically, a turbo diesel should not create serious problems, since its design is generally successful. But only under the condition of operation under normal conditions and the absence of mocking torture. The 1.3 CDTI is a good alternative for a gasoline engine in the city, but the operation of a turbocharger requires complex maintenance and, above all, regular oil changes. The manufacturer recommends changing it every 20,000 kilometers, which you will agree is too much. It is not surprising that then most of the engines are simply worn out and absorb a huge amount of oil. The oil level must be constantly monitored, since the volume of the lubrication system is only 3.2 liters. Even a small loss of oil is devastating to an engine. This is why many 1.3 CDTIs are already heavily worn by 200,000 kilometers. driving with a low oil level, especially in the city, is a disaster for a chain-driven timing system. The chain wears out and starts to make noise. It is better to pay attention to this in advance and replace the entire timing kit. Theoretically, the chain is designed for the entire service life, but in reality it has to be changed after 100 to 150,000 kilometers. Problems can be created by the EGR valve, which can be turned off without negative consequences for the engine. But for this you need to reconfigure the ECU. The injection system is stable, but only up to certain conditions. For long runs, you will have to restore it. First, there are leaks from the injectors. And because of the glow plugs and the flow meter, there are problems with starting a cold engine and power failures. With prolonged operation, more than 200 to 250,000 kilometers, one has to deal with the replacement of a turbocharger, a high-pressure fuel pump and a dual-mass flywheel. The 1.7-liter turbo diesel is much more reliable than its younger counterpart. Initially, versions without common rail injection were used. They were simpler and weaker. Despite the presence of a turbine, an intercooler was not used in the weakest 65 horsepower DI. Among the serious malfunctions, damage to the block head should be highlighted after the turbine began to throw oil. Later modifications have acquired common rail injection. This increased the dynamics, but the engine was still noisy. Trouble could deliver the controller or injection pump. All Opel Corsa are front-wheel drive. A 5-speed manual, a 4-speed automatic, or an Easytronic automated transmission were installed in a pair of power units. The manual transmission clutch is quite gentle. It wears out relatively quickly, especially with a dynamic driving style. This element is relatively expensive and cannot cope with the high power flow of the Italian turbo diesel. The weak spot in the manual transmission is the delicate fork. We do not recommend purchasing an Opel Corsa C with an Easytronic automatic transmission, which almost always has software problems. Much safer 4-speed classic, automatic. Of the minor diseases, it is worth noting the wear of the front wiper mechanism. Another typical problem is a broken plastic trim at the bottom of the windshield. Owners damage it while trying to remove the battery. They bend the plastic. This cannot be done. First, you need to unscrew the wipers and remove all the plastic. Then on the left side it will be possible to check the water flow. If it becomes clogged, then water will rush into the cabin. Electrical failures are not systemic in nature, so there are no specific complaints. True, sometimes the actuator responsible for the level of low beam headlights fails, or the central lock begins to act up, not all doors open. Body corrosion is not as extensive as that of its predecessor. As a rule, rust appears only on older cars. In addition, corrosion attacks the elements of the exhaust system.